306 men sailed out of Barbados. Not one of them was ever seen again. No wreckage, no debris, no bodies, no distress call. In March of 1918, the largest single loss of life in the history of the United States Navy happened without a single witness, without a single explanation, and without a single trace that anyone has been able to explain in the centuries since. This is the disappearance of the USS Cyclops. By the time the Cyclops sailed her final voyage, she was one of the most capable vessels in the Navy's fleet. Launched in 1910, she was a collier, a bulk cargo ship purpose-built to carry coal to fuel the warships of a growing naval empire. She stretched 542 feet from bow to stern and could carry more than 10,000 tons of cargo in her holds. In January of 1918, the Cyclops received a different assignment. The United States had entered the First World War the previous spring, and the Navy needed manganese ore, a key ingredient in the production of munitions shipped north from Brazil. The Cyclops was ordered to Rio de Janeiro to take on a full load. The man commanding her was Lieutenant Commander George Worley. Worley was, by multiple accounts, deeply unusual for a naval officer. He was German-born. His original name was Johann Georg Friedrich Wichmann, and he had been commanding Navy vessels since before the turn of the century. He was known for erratic behavior aboard his ships. Officers who had served under him described a commander who would appear on deck in his underwear and a derby hat, who drank heavily, who had a documented history of conflicts with subordinates serious enough to draw official complaints. One officer, Lieutenant Forbes, had filed a formal complaint against Worley during an earlier voyage, accusing him of conduct unbecoming an officer. The Navy investigated, and Worley retained his command. The Cyclops arrived in Rio de Janeiro in late January and took on her cargo: 10,800 tons of manganese ore. She departed Brazil on February 16, 1918, bound for Baltimore, Maryland. She stopped once. On March 3, 1918, the Cyclops put into Barbados. The reasons given were routine. She needed additional coal and provisions. Worley sent a message to the American consul in Barbados, reporting that one of the ship's 2 engines had been disabled, a broken cylinder, and that the vessel was traveling on a single engine. He also reported that he had a passenger aboard, a man who had not boarded in Rio. Consul General Alfred Gottschalk of Brazil, traveling to the United States. The Cyclops departed Barbados on March 4, 1918, carrying 306 men and a hold full of ore. No one on that island ever heard from her again. The distance from Barbados to Baltimore is approximately 1,400 miles. At the Cyclops' typical cruising speed, the voyage should have taken roughly 9 to 12 days. By mid-March, she had not arrived. The Navy waited. It sent queries to ports up the eastern seaboard: Norfolk, Charleston, Savannah. Nothing. No harbour master had logged her, no lighthouse keeper had noted her passing. No commercial vessel in the Atlantic had reported her on the radio. The Navy launched a search. It found nothing. Not a lifeboat, not a life preserver marked with her name, not a single board of timber that matched her construction. When the disappearance was made public, the press turned first to the obvious suspect: Germany. The United States was at war. German U-boats had been hunting Allied ships across the Atlantic for years. The loss of a naval vessel carrying 306 men was exactly the kind of devastation a submarine could deliver. But Germany denied it. After the war ended, Allied investigators were given access to German naval records. They examined the U-boat patrol logs for the area between Barbados and the eastern seaboard during March 1918. No German submarine reported an engagement with a vessel matching the Cyclops' description. None logged a sinking in that corridor during that period. Secretary of the Navy Josephus Daniels told the press he had no explanation for what had happened. It was the most honest statement anyone would offer. And it has remained accurate ever since. The investigation produced 3 competing lines of inquiry, each of which the record supports to some degree, and none of which the record can close. The first theory is structural failure. The Cyclops was carrying 10,800 tons of manganese ore, a cargo denser and heavier than coal. Manganese ore does not distribute itself evenly in a ship's hold the way coal does. It settles and shifts, and it is significantly heavier per cubic foot. Naval architects who later examined the Cyclops' specifications noted that she was loaded to and possibly beyond her rated capacity. Her one disabled engine meant she had limited maneuverability if she encountered heavy weather. And March in the Atlantic is not forgiving. The problem is that no significant storm system was recorded on the likely route between Barbados and Baltimore during the relevant window in March 1918. Weather records from the period are incomplete, but the reports that do exist do not describe conditions severe enough to guarantee the loss of a ship her size. The ore itself poses a second mechanical risk. When a bulk cargo shifts during a heavy roll, the resulting list can become self-reinforcing. The ship tips, the ore slides, the ship tips further. The second theory centers on Commander Worley himself. His German birth attracted immediate suspicion in the wartime climate. Naval investigators looked hard at whether he might have deliberately steered the ship off course, to the Azores, to a German-controlled port, or somewhere else entirely. His documented behavioral history gave the theory a surface plausibility. The heavy drinking, the complaints from officers, the erratic conduct. But no evidence of sabotage or defection was ever found. No German record of the Cyclops arriving anywhere. No communication intercepted. No informant report placing Worley in contact with enemy agents. The third theory returns to the ship herself. The Cyclops had a known structural problem. She was a sister ship to the Proteus and Nereus, 2 nearly identical colliers that were themselves lost under similar circumstances during the Second World War. One in late 1941, one in 1942, both vanishing in the same general Atlantic corridor without survivors. 3 sister ships, 3 disappearances, all in the same ocean. All without wreckage. A ship that sinks fast enough in deep enough water leaves almost nothing on the surface. The Atlantic east of the Carolinas reaches depths of more than 3 miles. 3 miles down, in 1918, nothing was recoverable. In 1968, the Navy officially closed its investigation into the disappearance of the USS Cyclops, having reached no conclusion. The case file is maintained as an open mystery. Josephus Daniels's 1918 statement has never been improved upon. No subsequent investigation, no technological advance, no declassified document has produced a cause of loss. What we know for certain is tight enough to write on a single page. The Cyclops left Barbados on March 4, 1918. She was running on one engine and carrying more ore than she was comfortably built for. She carried 306 men. She passed into the Atlantic and she did not arrive. No enemy claimed her, no survivor reported in, no wreck has been located. The seafloor between Barbados and Baltimore has never been comprehensively surveyed. Modern sonar mapping has covered portions of it, but the full corridor, the Cyclops' most probable route, remains largely uncharted at the depth where a wreck would rest. No dedicated search expedition has been funded to try. 306 names. No grave, no answer. The Cyclops' sister ships, the Proteus and the Nereus, vanished in the same ocean a generation later. Same design, same cargo type, same silence after. Naval historians have never been able to determine whether that is a coincidence or a pattern. And the distinction matters enormously, because if it is a pattern, then somewhere in the design records and the load calculations of 3 dead ships is a specific, readable answer. It has simply never been read. The Cyclops sailed into one of the most heavily trafficked shipping corridors in the world and ceased to exist. Whatever happened, it happened completely. No fragment, no call sign, no body ever recovered to indicate a last moment. 306 men sailed out of Barbados on a grey March morning in 1918. The Atlantic was calm. The ship was slow but steady. There was nothing to see in any direction but open water. And then there was nothing else at all. Thank you for watching. If a story like this is why you're here, hit subscribe. We open a new file every few days. Every file in the vault has a story. We'll see you at the next one.